Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back. Just wanted to give a quick hello as I jump into this. If you're interested in anything based on Japan, this is what my channel is all about. I answer questions that viewers have about Japan. I've lived there going on 16 years now. I'm now in between both countries where I live winter months here in America and summer months there in Japan. I have a house in both countries. So if you're wondering how I go back and forth all the time, that's how. Half of my family's there too. So thank you for coming if this is your first time to the channel, and thank you for returning if you've been here for a while. Today we are covering the disappearance of another foreigner visiting Japan. I asked you if you guys wanted to see more of that with my last video on Sky Budnick. I got a very positive response. And I feel also like these cases aren't covered enough. I think a lot of you can agree, like you've never heard about that last case, most of you. And even when I was living in Japan, that happened in 2008 when Sky Budnick went missing in Japan. I saw nothing on the news there. And I watched the news like literally every single night, a couple different channels like News Zero, NHK, and stuff like that. I do not remember. It might have been covered, but if it was for like a blip and then it was gone. Same thing with this case. This happened in, let me get the exact date, missing July 29th, 2018. The person we are talking about today is Tiffaine Véron. I hope I said that correctly. It's a French name that I've never said before. I don't speak any French, and I apologize if I'm horribly mispronouncing this name. Please bear with me. The only two languages I speak well enough to pronounce things correctly is English and Japanese. So I apologize if I'm butchering this name. Tiffaine Véron. She was a 36-year-old who had actually been to Japan before. And she actually had quite a big interest. She had studied up quite a lot. Looking into this case, I found there was even like pictures of her keeping journals and stuff, talking about Japan, how she had been there before. She had even made friends in Japan before, so that when she was coming back for this trip that we're about to talk about, she had people she was going to meet, people she was going to give presents to, places she already knew. And like this lady sounds like she really knew a lot about Japan. Like even when she was going, she had a big amount of research done on areas she wanted to see that even I haven't heard of before, that had like really beautiful temples and stuff like that. So this lady sounds like she really, really knew her stuff about Japan. 2018 too, there was already a ton of stuff usually on the internet by that time. My earlier case that was 2008, Japan's information was still kind of trickling onto the internet. I know that sounds crazy since we've had the internet for way longer than 2008, but really Japan wasn't talked about that much. Like for example, even the channels that talked about Japan here on YouTube were very far and few and in between. And there just wasn't a lot of like legit information people could look up. But 2018, there's a ton people can look up. There's a library of knowledge. J-vloggers already here in Japan talking about all different spaces and areas and temples and shrines and jinja and Teira and all that different stuff. And she had everything lined up with what she wanted to do. She was 36 years old when she left France to go to Japan. And as soon as she got there, she landed in Haneda and headed off to an area called Nikko. Nikko, I would say, if the best way to describe it is it's on the edges of Tokyo. You start to get into like extreme countryside at that point. We're far outside of the city of Tokyo. Tokyo takes up a lot more space than what you actually imagine, and there are a lot of tiny little cities on the edge of it. And a lot of time, the reason all these little tiny cities exist on the edge is because it's much cheaper to buy, build, or rent a place in these countryside places and then commute to Tokyo all day for your work and get Tokyo Pay to pay off a place that costs as much as a countryside place. So you have a lot of these really beautiful country villages, and that's where she was headed to, one of those called Nikko. And the reason she was going there is she even knew about like really nice mountain temples and mountain nature trails and stuff like this, which sounds super awesome. I mean, they showed some pictures of the area she was in, and I mean, it's even more countryside than a place like Kyoto. It's beautiful looking. A lot of original looking shrines that, aren't the types that were bombed out during World War II and rebuilt. Just beautiful stuff out there. So it made total sense. And the fact that she knew this area existed means she really knew her stuff about Japan. This wasn't like a first timer kind of scratching her head looking around at what should I go to first. This is someone who put a lot of in-depth knowledge into figuring out what they really want to do with their time in Japan. So she gets to her hotel, which looked like, when I saw pictures of the area that she was staying in, it was like a ryokan. So it's like a really Japanese style, old style traditional Japanese hotel. They usually have a hot springs in them. You usually sleep on a futon that is on top of tatami mat with shogi sliding doors and stuff like that. So she's in a place like that. Usually these are very rural area hotels that people stay in, and she unpacked everything and headed out the next day. People said they saw her head out on foot, which is not too crazy to think about since she had nature trails right next to her. And probably what she did was go to head out to one of these nature trails. In fact, this was the last day that she was ever seen, and the only, I guess, presence that she had while leaving that day is the staff at the hotel saying they saw her leave on foot. And apparently another man had passed her while she was walking on nature trails in the mountains. That was the last sighting of Tiffaine Veron. No one ever saw her again after that. And this is not a case where, with our last case, with the Sky Budnick case, she went to Japan with not a lot of stuff. Apparently she didn't even have a suitcase. Like, everything she brought was a carry-on. It was a very, very tiny amount of stuff. And she didn't even have like cell coverage from abroad. But because Sky Budnick didn't even have a cell phone. But this lady actually had like her own cell phone. She had taken that with her, but everything else was left in her hotel room. Her passport was still in there. Letters that she had written for back home, presents she was still going to hand out to friends and stuff like that. A day planner that said where she wanted to go each day. So she had like a whole plan laid out for people she was going to go visit, gifts she was going to go hand out to them, postcards she was going to send back to France and stuff like that. This is not the Sky Budnick situation where she just went there, hadn't even told her parents that she had left and gone to Japan, went there with little to nothing, and the only technology she brought was like a Nintendo DS in her computer, which we're not 100% sure she could have even had internet access with. This is a lady going there with most likely a smartphone, which she'll come into. We'll talk about this more later. She had a smartphone that she brought with her, and this was something that was able to be tracked a little bit, but still did not lead to solving the case. We're going to go into theories now. We're going to talk about what some people have said could have happened, and why some are more believable than others. So, for example, the first one being, of course, everyone talks about suicide. I think there is a lot of people who believe when foreigners go missing in Japan that they come there to, commit the big end of life. And, I don't know if I don't have a single story in my head about a foreigner who came to Japan and did that. I have stories of foreigners who came to Japan, lived there a long time, and at one point did commit to that, which maybe I'll save for another day. But this is not a constant thing that's happening in Japan, is what I'm trying to say. There's not people coming over to Japan to make it the last place they live. The goofiest thing is people always talk about the fact that we have the suicide forest here, that's a reason people come to Japan, because they know like they can blend in and enjoy dying in a place that many people have died in before. Well, first of all, she's completely far away from that area to begin with. Nikko is not anywhere close to Aokigahara, the forest people are talking about. And on top of that, there's so many extra things that don't show. There's no note, there's no suicide note. Like I said, she had a long-term plan, multiple presents for friends, a schedule posted in her day planner, and like maps of different areas that she wanted to go to around Japan. So like this was a lady who had a long-term plan. She had a return ticket bought too. So I mean that's also very different from the last case I was talking about. So she even had her like return ticket bought to come back to France. Suicide, very unlikely. Okay. Next is accidents. Now, this is a little more believable because they said when she was going through these mountain trails the next day, she had come to Japan just after a massive storm had hit the area that she was in. So think about this: you're climbing up a mountain trail, she wasn't going on any kind of like literal climb where you're like grabbing from root to rock to try and make it up the side of a cliff. She's just going up a simple trail, but when that trail is post storm and super slippery and wet, it is easy to fall off of that. And one thing people talked about might have happened is that there's extremely like raging rapids and rivers and creeks that are near a lot of these paths on the mountains out in Nikko where she was walking. And was there a possibility that due to like slippery parts due to the rain that she could have fallen into one of these and been scooped up? So I feel like at the beginning of this search, you're going to find out that Japan put a lot of effort into trying to find her at the beginning. Okay. So they even put like divers into the water and stuff like that. They checked out all different areas of the cliff, I should say the cliff, the trail that she was at, to the point that they had 80 searchers out there checking through the trails that one man had seen her walking through and stuff like that. Nobody found a single thing. Like there wasn't even like, a shoe or a piece of clothing or anything found whatsoever. And what also kind of discounts that it might have been an accident is that all the different rivers and river rapids, creeks, high speed flowing bodies of water, all kind of connected at this grate system that was at the end of a lot of these rivers. Collecting on metal bars, anything that was like, gunk or trash or anything like that. And these are grates that are like close enough, metal bars that are close enough that a body couldn't get through. So even if she had fallen down onto one of these rivers or creeks, all of them kind of connected at this grate area. And it would have easily caught the body if she had actually fallen in. Divers never found anything either, not a single clue. And there was nothing left on the path that looked like there had been a struggle. There was no article of clothing, no lost shoes or anything like that, what you would see when there was a struggle or something like that. But accidents seem to be checked out as maybe not being the situation. But one thing that could have been the situation is that she had epilepsy. Now, having an accident because you slip, a possibility, a belief that could happen, I understand. But having an accident when you have an epileptic fit, that is way more believable. Of course, that could possibly happen. At the same time, though, the police talked about the area that she was in, and they said because she had been seen by at least one man on those trails. They said those trails were walked every single day, and if she had collapsed or anything like that, they said even like forest rangers in that area would have found her. Even other hikers would have found her. Unless she like went completely super far off the path to have an epileptic seizure. Now, I don't know a lot about epileptic seizures. I don't know if you can like feel it coming on or if it just hits you suddenly out of nowhere. But if there's even the slight chance that she could feel one coming on, she would most likely not wander off the path, I would imagine. At the same time, I don't know if I think I've heard in the past that epileptic seizures can start out with your like thought process becoming cloudy, what you're doing becoming kind of confused. You can even start to like lose eyesight and stuff like that for a little while, or like go deaf in one ear for a little while, and then you finally get hit with the epileptic seizure. Correct me if I am wrong about any of these ideas. This is stuff I've heard from friends of friends who had people, get hurt in accidents with epileptic seizures and stuff like that. That's something I've heard. So maybe that could cloud her mind enough that she would suddenly wander off the trail and then have an epileptic seizure, in which case that's very dire, and I could understand why it made searching for her very difficult. But at the same time, there's medication. As long as you're taking your medication, most people can avoid epileptic seizures. It didn't sound like it was something that was constantly happening in her life. There was a little bit of life history going on where it said she was a bit sick when she was in high school, but since then she hadn't really been sick at all. And when she got into like her college degree, which she mastered in art history, if I remember correctly, and then became an aide at a special needs school. And they said she hadn't had any kind of problems with epileptic seizures or anything like that since. So this would have been a really strange occurrence to suddenly happen after, she's 36. She hadn't had one since high school. How many years does that put between her last episode? But I don't know. Like I said, medication could play a part in that. Suddenly like losing your faculties due to a seizure coming on. Is that a possibility that made her wander off the path? Moving on, we've got to talk about it taken against her will. Now this is a scary one because this is the first kind of thing I kind of usually brush off because Japan is usually so very safe. With the Sky Budnick one that we just talked about, where she went missing in the middle of the snow and mountains of Hokkaido, that's an area that no one would even be living in or even be able to like drive a car in some of those areas. Someone trying to hide out and wait for someone to wander into that area would most likely die from frostbite. So I can't imagine somebody doing that out here. But I guess in Nikko, which is on the edges of Tokyo, you would still have moderate weather when she got there. Especially, no one would be cold or dying from the cold because it was July 29th, which would be blistering hot. A little less hot out in the countryside where she's at, but in Tokyo, I mean, you'd be feeling like you're cooked in an oven on July 29th. Let me tell you, man, the heat is unbearably hot in Japan during the summer. Countryside, she's probably okay, but that also means that anybody could be hiding out because there's not the chance that you could die to the climate. Waiting out to see if someone will wander into a certain area that you can kidnap them. And one problem that was eventually revealed was that people had been taken in the past in one of the areas that she was close to while on the path in the mountains that she was at. So, the search for her went on from, early 2018 when she was there. The police put a lot of effort into it, it seemed like at first. The family came there looking for her, and then after they went back and nothing had been found, it seems like police kind of just dropped the ball after that. They're just like, okay, well, nothing was found. We're dropping this. And it wasn't until 2019 that we hopped back onto this theory of her being kidnapped. 2019, a man was being sighted by multiple path walkers that had been hanging out or kind of hiding behind like a tiny little shrine. So like, okay, when you're thinking of like temples and shrines in Japan, you're probably thinking of like huge buildings, but some of the shrines in Japan are literally just like a small cubby with a Buddha statue on top, or a small little like closet looking area in the middle of the woods sometimes. Yeah, I know it sounds weird, but it's true. And it just has some offering tables on it or something like that. And to be able to just hide behind one of those would probably be pretty easy. They have like a giant stone statue on them usually. They're usually about the size of like a door. Think about that. So you could hide behind something the size of a door very easily, right? Not too hard. And it was bad enough that 2 different women had reported that there had been a man there who came out from behind the shrine and comes up and says, hey, are you lost on this trail? Do you need some help? Like, I can show you around some of the great spots in this area. I live close by and stuff. And one had just kind of been like, no, I'm good. But one had said, yeah, okay, like I'd like to see more of this area. And this is Japanese women talking about this who encountered this guy. And the guy was Japanese too, just so you know. I'm sure you guys probably assumed that, but I want to make sure everybody understands. And this guy who offered the other one a chance to go around and see special stuff in the area, brought her over to a car. And she even said, this guy brought me over to a blue car and was like, come on, get inside, and then I'll take you around to some areas nearby. And that's when she started to get freaked out. I was like, no, I'm not getting into the car with like a guy I don't know. And it was bad enough. This guy had done this enough with not just these 2 women, apparently some other people too, but he had done it enough that they started putting up signs in the area of this shrine. Like they erected signs that are like, look out for this guy who's been asking people to sees some extra sights around this area and then tries to lure them to a blue car. If you see this guy, report it to the police, and also just don't trust him. Don't just start following random people around. And the scariest thing about this is when these signs were starting to be put up, that's when posters of not only T-Fane that had been put up around the same mountain trail area, but those signs themselves all got ripped down. Someone had come back to the area, ripped down the signs that said, look out for this guy who's trying to lure people to his car, and ripped down the signs of posters looking for T-Fane, which is kind of scary, dude. I think that makes me lean towards some kind of kidnapping go on. Now, one comment by her brother, and I thought this was a really good insight on his part, even though he just came to Japan to be searching for his sister. He made a comment where he said, my sister is, level-headed, she's concerned with safety, she always is cautious with what she does, but when she comes to Japan, she believes it to be a much safer country than her own, and she may have been more trusting than she normally was, which totally makes sense. If anyone was going to ask me, what country do you feel the safest in when you're just walking the streets or on a mountain path or I would definitely say Japan 100%. Okay, no one's gonna have a gun out there. No one has ever approached me in any kind of dangerous way or wielded any kind of weapon or tried to mug me, or the worst thing I've ever had happen to me is the police question me if I'm stealing bikes or something like that. That probably the worst part comes from too much police presence for me. But I can understand why he said this, that, number one, Japan is safe. Number two, the countryside of Japan, crime is unheard of most times. Usually they have only one or two police out there because just nothing happens. What is someone doing? Stealing your rice from your rice field? That's about all there is to do out there. There's not even Konbini or Quickie Marts or anything like that where you can even rob them or anything like that. So yeah, I can totally understand why she might have gone there with her guard kind of dropped. I would honestly have even as someone living in Japan as long as I have, my guard is usually dropped when I'm off into the countryside as well. I trust the area way more. So this may have also made her an easy victim for someone to, lure into that blue car that had been taking people away or trying to kidnap people in the past. So we're into the year of 2024 now. Her family is still searching. The police have kind of completely dropped the ball. They're not trying to find her anymore. Even the UN has reached out and contacted Japan and been like, hey, can you try to help this family out or do something about it? This is kind of ridiculous that you just completely dropped the case. Let me just read the most recent updated article that I've seen about this, just to kind of give you a sense of where they're at right now. They've done a ton of work. The family themselves trying to find their daughter. They went as far as to hire private investigators and pay for them to go to Japan to search for their daughter there. So this is a family that's super dedicated. I can't imagine the cost of hiring a PI, which is already expensive, and then paying for them to go to Japan, which is also expensive. And then you have to pay the cost of them living there while they're doing the research and everything. I mean, that, on top of it, you've got the whole missing child taking a toll on your mind mentally while you're dishing out all this money to pay for private investigators. I can't imagine the stress. I can't. The Varan family is convinced that T-Fane's disappearance was not an accident. In a book published last year titled T-Fane, Where Are You?, the family detailed issues they had experienced in dealing with Japan's police and the country's judicial system. In response to an appeal from the family, the UN Committee on Enforced Disappearances formally requested in April 2024 that Japanese authorities improve cooperation with their French counterparts. After France had, back in September 2018, opened a kidnapping investigation into the case, a government official said in mid-July that Japan had, quote-unquote, properly responded to the UN's panel requests. The UN committee said that French authorities had asked Japanese police to collect and preserve mobile phone data in 2018 and again in 2021, but received no response. So this is always a problem I hear when like there's some kind of catastrophe, murder, missing person, that they'll like keep asking Japan for stuff to hand over so they can at least investigate it, and Japan just kind of like either never answers or drags their feet. I don't know what the reason is for this. If you have any ideas yourself, please let me know in the comments down below, but I do not know why they would do this. Maybe it shows they were not handling something correctly. I will say the last little bit of evidence, and I've got to kind of, my hat's off to France for this. There is a French mobile phone company that helped the family out by tracking what happened to Tiffany's phone during the time that she went missing. And the scariest thing that makes me kind of lean even more towards kidnapping is that they tracked her phone for a very short time as soon as she started that trail, and that it was turned off in a way, and I don't know how best to explain this, but I'm going to try my best. It was turned off in a way in which you wouldn't just hit like the power off button. It was turned off more so in a way where either the phone was destroyed suddenly or the batteries were ripped out of it. So, I mean, she had a smartphone at the time. I don't know how easy it is to rip your battery out of a smartphone. I don't know how to do that. I do know how to damage a smartphone so that it doesn't work anymore. I've done that before by accident. So, what could have happened there? It's suddenly turned off. They have a record of it suddenly turning off in, the not normal way, as in batteries being ripped out or it being smashed to a point of not working anymore. They said that was the one big thing that they could track that concerned them. That's what the phone company told them. And also just, hats off for a phone company coming forward and actually helping the case. You hear so many of these cases where like the phone company refuses to work with the police. It's nice to hear them actually, working with them for once. But that's where we're at right now. Tiffany is still missing. There's little to no clue as to what exactly happened to her. My theories are just theories. I have no true answer as to what I think actually happened to her. I do hope for the family's sake that they reach some sort of, conclusion to this, letting them know exactly what did happen to their daughter. It's got to be brutal to just go through all of this and, have someone leave one day for a place they're really excited to go and then you never see them again. I can't imagine the hurt in your heart waiting for that person to be found, come back, or just any kind of answer about them at all. Anyway, I gotta be more careful with how I do this time. Last time I was thanking my members, and I went into it very chipper and happy to say thank you to all my members after these kind of really dark stories. And I just want to apologize for that. I kind of got I was like, and now let's announce all our awesome members after talking about a really dark subject of someone going missing. I'm never trying to downplay these. I just, am excited that I have members who actually watch the channel. And I am going to read them in every video. If you yourself want to be one of the names that I read off, just join the channel. It's $1.90 for 1 month, and that gets you 4 extra videos every month. You'll be getting them usually on Sunday. Members' videos come out every Sunday, and it adds, an extra hour, sometimes 2 hours to what you get to watch of this channel for $1.90. I think it's kind of reasonable, right? Anyway, let me give a shout out real quick to a new member here. We got Jink640, Blind Man Travels, Jones G, Collective Commentary, Michael R, Dildo Vagins, Mio, Max Ren, Ozdev, Colin Copata, Alejandro Cisneros, sorry, Alejandro, I apologize, Blah, 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 Humble Monk, Andre Sanchez, Raymond Beckman, Jay, Aaron Spooner, Eviscerations, Naz L, Ryan, Kaiser Grendel, Bridget, Andy, Carolyn Markey, Mitchell, Impressive Tony, Matt Lee, Silverstitch 28, Jose Casulius, Murphy, Draz Creates, Light Lolouch, Smile Kita 13, Worm Self, Chrissy Meow, Sriracha, Frorasu, Humble Judo Lord, Citrus, Fat Jaskins, Sprinkly Donut, Yodadu, Ricardo Contreras, Analoki, Slayer Duck, Jonas Slocum, Ice Cold, Reinhardt or Die Trying, Treknik, and I Am Sandpaper. Guys, thanks so much for sticking around. If you stuck around to the very end of this video, you rock, you're the best. If I could get a thumbs up, a like, a comment, anything that helps you interact with this video helps a lot. I'm going up in subs, guys. I cannot believe I'm going up in subs. I have not gone up in subs, I don't know, for like 5 years or something like that. And I am literally up like plus 33 subs every couple of days, which is, that's crazy to me. I never thought this channel would ever get subs again. Thank you so much. You guys are the best, and I'll talk to you again real soon.